Hello, this is Angelia, and you are watching or listening to the podcast, Why You Do, What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to try and help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. Last time we were talking about parenting and popularity, and we're going to kind of talk about a window on the world, a nation of only children. In 1979, to control an exploding population, the People's Republic of China established an official policy of limiting families to one child each. Now, can you imagine a government doing that? I think that's just awful. In addition to propaganda campaigns and incentives, housing, money, childcare, health care, and preference in school placement, to induce voluntary compliance, millions of involuntary abortions and sterilizations have taken place. So, can you imagine that? You wanted your child, but they forced you to have an abortion, or they forced you to be sterilized. These, in my opinion, are serious human rights violations. People who have had children without first getting a permit face fines and loss of jobs. So if you want to have a bigger family, you would face a fine. You might lose your job. That's just craziness. By 1985, at least getting a permit faced, at least 8 out of 10 young urban couples, and half of those in rural areas, had only one child. So, if you can imagine something like that happening here, I can't really, honestly. That's too much government control. And I can't imagine it actually happening here. The country's estimated population growth was holding steady at a little more than 1%. And of course, that's the case, if you're only allowed to have one child for two people. Today, the one-child policy is unevenly enforced. The State Family Planning Commission has now prohibited forced sterilizations and abortions and has begun to switch to a system stressing education, contraceptive choice, and heavy taxation for families with more than one child. So at least they're realizing this was a bad policy. We're abusing our own people. We need to kind of dial it back a little bit. In a small but growing number of countries, fixed quotas and permit requirements have been eliminated. And that's, counties and states and things within China. There's a lot of division. China was kind of like Britain, kind of annexed several places. Still, you should be able to choose how many children you have, and I know in the past it was considered, fortunate to have a bunch of children. So their mindset changed. Still, in many Chinese cities, kindergartens and primary classrooms are almost completely filled with children who have no brothers or sisters. Isn't that a shame? This situation marks a great change in Chinese society, in which newlyweds were traditionally congratulated with the wish, "May you have 100 sons and 1,000 grandsons." What kind of future population are the Chinese raising? Among 4,000 third and sixth graders, personality differences between only children and those with siblings, as rated by parents, teachers, peers, and the children themselves, were few. In academic achievement and physical growth, only children did about the same as, or better than, those with siblings. A review of the literature found no significant differences in behavior problems. The small number of severe problems that did appear in only children were attributed to parental overindulgence and overprotection. And like I said, your kid, excuse me, oh my gosh, should have rewards and punishments. There should be consequences for actions. If you spoil your kid, of course they're going to be spoiled brats. That's just a fact, sorry. And if you protect them from everything in the world, they're not going to know anything about anything in the world, and they're going to be a fearful child. Indeed, only children seem to be at a distinct psychological advantage in China. When questionnaires were administered to 731 urban children and adolescents, children with siblings reported higher levels of fear, anxiety, and depression than only children, regardless of sex or age. So, there might be something to that, because sometimes our brothers and sisters can traumatize us, even if they don't mean to, but it happens. Apparently, children with siblings are less well-adjusted in a society that favors and rewards the only child. Only children seem to do better cognitively, too. A randomized study in Beijing schools found that only children outperform first-grade classmates with siblings in memory, language, and mathematics skills. So, again, only children are given a lot more attention and taught a little bit more by the parent because there's no siblings that take the attention away. This finding may reflect the greater attention, stimulation, hopes, and expectations that parents shower on a baby they know will be their first and last. Fifth grade only children who were born before the one-child policy was strongly enforced and whose parents originally may have planned on a large family. Oh my goodness. Like I said, every time I think I'm over this, I keep coughing. Did not show a pronounced cognitive edge. Both of these studies used urban samples. Further research may reveal whether the findings hold up in rural areas and small towns, where children with siblings are more numerous, and whether only children maintain my goodness, their cognitive superiority as they move through school. So this is for that, people in the city growing up, and like I said, their parents are probably giving them more attention because there's not any siblings to take that attention away from them. China's population policy has wider implications. If it succeeds, most Chinese will eventually lack aunts, uncles, nephews, nieces, and cousins, as well as siblings, because there won't be any oh my goodness, siblings for there to be aunts, uncles, and cousins. That's a crazy system that you have a direct descent system. How this will affect individuals, families, and the social fabric is incalculable. Because, if you can imagine that, imagine you have no aunts or uncles and no cousins. A more sinister question is this: what happened to the girls? A 1990 census suggests that 5% of all infant girls born in China, some 500,000 infants born alive each year, are unaccounted for. And there are many rumors about that, about, them being murdered and things of that nature. But, of course, the government's not going to come out and say, yeah, we did that. Suspicions are that many parents, being permitted only one child, had their baby girls killed or let them die of neglect to allow the parents the chance to bear and raise more highly valued sons. So over there in China, there's going to be a dearth of girls. They have a lot of single men. A more benign explanation is that these girls were hidden and raised secretly to evade the one-child policy. In either case, China's one-child policy appears to be having ramifications its developers may not have considered, and concern about these unforeseen effects may be one factor in oh my goodness the current relaxation of enforcement, because they're realizing, oops, this has more effects than we actually wanted it to. We were just trying to keep the population down, but maybe this wasn't the way to go about it. Oh my goodness. Okay. All right. The middle years of childhood, from about age 6 to age 11, are often called the school years. School is the central experience during this time, a focal point for physical, cognitive, and psychosocial development. Children grow taller, heavier, and stronger, and acquire the motor skills needed to participate in organized games and sports. They also make major advances in thinking, in moral judgment, in memory, and in literacy. Individual differences become more evident and special needs more important, as competencies affect success in school. I have to pause for a second. All right, I'm back. Competencies also affect self-esteem and popularity, as we see in Chapter 10, which we read that a while back. So, although parents continue to be important, the peer groups is more influential than before. Influential. Don't have a stroke. Just don't. Oh, it's annoying. Children develop physically, cognitively, and emotionally, as well as socially, through contacts with other youngsters. I'll get it out eventually. Hang in there. Okay. What we must remember above all in the education of our children is that their love of life should never weaken. And that's by Natalia Ginsburg, The Little Virtues in 1985. Anne Bancroft, Polar Explorer. Anne Bancroft is the first woman in history to reach both the North and South Poles by non-motorized means. In 1986, she dog sledded 1,000 miles from the Northwest Territories in Canada to the North Pole. I thought I got this all out of my system. As the only female member of an international expedition. After surviving 8 months of grueling training and enduring temperatures as low as minus 70 degrees for 56 days, Bancroft stood on top of the world. 7 years later, she led 3 other women in a 67-day 660-mile ski trek to the South Pole, reaching it on January 14, 1993. For these explorers, she was inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame. My goodness. I'm going to be inducted into the Coughing Hall of Fame. In 2000, she and Liv Arnesen of Norway became the first team of women to ski across the landmass of Antarctica. And in 2002, the 2 women reunited for a kayaking voyage from the north shores of Lake Superior to the St. Lawrence Seaway. How did this 5'3", 125-pound woman achieve these remarkable feats? The answers go back to her childhood in Medora Heights, Minnesota. Born September 29, 1955, into what she calls a family of risk-takers, Anne showed her climbing instincts as soon as she could walk. As a toddler, she would climb her grandmother's bookcase to reach things on top. Instead of trying to stop her from climbing, her parents said, "Go ahead and try. You might just get what you want." And wouldn't that be nice if all of our parents said that to us? Go ahead and try. You might get what you want. Anne was so an outdoor girl. She and her 2 brothers and 2 sisters spent hours roaming the fields surrounding their farmhouse. Anne would pretend she was a pirate, building rafts to float down the creek, or an adventurer, canoeing in the far north. During the winter, she would build snow forts, sleeping shacks, and tunnels. Her father often took the family on camping and canoe trips in the wilds of northern Minnesota. When she was 8, Anne started camping out in her backyard in winter with her cousins and the family dog. When she was 10, her parents went to Africa as missionaries. Anne's 2 years in Kenya kindled her thirst to see other parts of the world. In school, Anne was a poor student and had to be tutored to keep up. A natural athlete, her favorite class was gym. Not until 7th grade did she learn that she had dyslexia, a reading disability. Around that time, Anne came across a book about Sir Ernest Shackleton's unsuccessful effort to reach the South Pole. In 1914, she was drawn to the photographs. I was so fascinated by the images that I no longer was intimidated by the words and thickness of the book, Anne recalls. I wanted to know about this adventurer, and at the bottom of the world, this began my curiosity with Antarctica and the dream of one day crossing it. Anne became a physical education teacher and athletic director in St. Paul. In 1983, she and a friend climbed Alaska's Mount McKinley, the highest peak in North America, an expedition that could have ended in disaster for her partner, who developed hypothermia, had it not been for Anne's training in first aid and emergency medicine. 2 years later, Anne was invited to join the Steger International Polar Expedition to the North Pole as a medic and trip photographer. The goal was not so much reaching the pole itself, Bancroft recalls. It was more universal. Why do we all take on struggles? Why run a marathon? I think we're all striving to push ourselves. And in the process of overcoming struggle and challenges, we get to know ourselves better. And that's true. Adversity can help you understand yourself a little better. You understand how you figure things out. You understand what you'll do, in struggle. And that helps you to overcome and, be a better person. Bancroft's childhood struggle with dyslexia helps explain the determination that helped her succeed as a polar explorer. I get stubborn and dig in when people tell me I can't do something, and I think I can, she explains. I never wanted to be perceived as handicapped or limited in any way. And children don't, who have dyslexia or any other mental disability. They don't want to be that way. And that's why I said I treated my kids like any other kid. They might have had, some mental disability, but they overcame and, they're very successful young men. So Bancroft's childhood struggle with dyslexia helps explain the determination that helped her succeed as a polar explorer. Today, Bancroft is an instructor for Wilderness Inquiry, a program for both able-bodied people and those with disabilities. During her first South Pole expedition, she lugged a 30-pound radio set across the ice so she could send progress reports to students around the world. On her last expedition to Antarctica with Arneson, children in more than 40 countries followed the journey with the help of an interactive website. She has co-authored a book about her adventures. For her, perhaps the greatest challenge of all. Her goal is to inspire children around the globe to pursue their dreams, and she has. It is totally energizing, she says, to step out each day living a dream. And so it would be also for you. So if you have a dream that you're not living, you can do that. You can step out now, take that leap of faith, that first step, and live your dreams. You might have to make small changes before you can make big changes, but you can do it. As a schoolgirl, Anne Bancroft may not have seemed extraordinary except that her dyslexia marked her as a child with special needs. Yet her achievements, based on her indomitable energy and will, oh my goodness, go away, are impressive indeed. Her story illustrates how a dream formed in childhood can inspire later accomplishments. She is a living example of the power of attitudes and desires to shape physical and cognitive development. So, if you are young and you have the desire to get what you want, when you get older, you're going to have that as well. So, if you spoil your kid and give them everything they want without them having to work for it or something, what you're doing, oh my gosh, there's a moth in here, is messing up their future because they won't have the desire to go for what they want. If it don't come easy, I remember I told you about a life coaching client I had. If it didn't come easy, she quit. And that's kind of people you're raising, you're making, if you don't allow them to work. Like I said, we had a chore chart. Doing the chores, got your reward. Not doing the chores, got your punishment. So, do that for your kids. Oh my gosh. Although motor abilities improve less dramatically in middle childhood than before, these years are an important time for the development of the strength, stamina, endurance, and motor proficiency needed for sports and outdoor activities. So, your school age child, 5 to, they say 11, some people say 10, it all just depends. They should be getting physical activity. This is when they should be playing outside. That's why I really hate that a lot of schools took gym out of the, equation, or recess even out of the equation. Children should be getting out and playing and developing, their large motor skills at this point in time, especially, because that will help them be healthier as they grow up. In this chapter, we look at these and other physical developments. Cognitively, we see how, entrance into Piaget's stage of concrete operations enables children to think logically and to make more mature judgments. Because that's the goal, mentally, is when you get to be a certain age, you can make more mature judgments for yourself. You develop critical thinking, common sense, you learn from your mistakes. That's a goal in life. We see how children improve in memory and problem solving, how their intelligence is tested, and how the ability to read and write open the door to participation in a wider world, because it does. I remember I was selling papers with a friend of mine, and this one truck guy stopped and he was talking to me, and I was like, well, are you going to buy a paper? Because I was like, why does he just keep talking to me? And he's like, oh, I can't read. I was like, oh, we could use it for like your puppy or your bird or something. But, he's missing out on a lot of stuff going on in the world. Because reading and writing, especially nowadays, our kids are, glued to their phone. They have to read and text and, things all the time. So anyone who has problems with that, it is going to kind of limit you on what you're doing. We look at factors affecting school achievement, and we examine the controversies over IQ testing, methods of teaching, reading, and second language education. Finally, we see how schools educate children with exceptional needs like Anne Bancroft. After you learn this, you should be able to answer each of the things about development, of course. Okay, okay. We'll go into physical development. Aspects of physical development. If we were to walk by a typical elementary school just after the 3 o'clock bell, we would see a virtual explosion of children. My goodness. Tissues over here. And I don't like that example that they put out there. That hopefully that is not something you ever see or should ever be a thing. Um, Children of all shapes and sizes, tall ones, short ones, husky ones, and slender ones would be bursting out of the school doors into the open air. We would see the school-age children look very different from children a few years younger. They are taller, and most are fairly wiry, but more are likely to be overweight than in the past decades, and some may be malnourished. Some of these children, who have spent much of the day sitting at school, will go home, get a snack, and dash outside to jump rope, play ball, skate, cycle, or throw snowballs. Some, especially these with working parents, may stay at school for organized after-school programs. Many children, however, go inside after school not to emerge for the rest of the day. Instead of participating and practicing skills that stretch their bodies, they do homework or sit in front of the television set. When we talk about physical development in middle childhood, then we need to look closely at individual children. And like I said, your children, your school-age children from 5 to 10, they need to be getting some exercise. This is when their large muscles develop and grow, and they develop the ability to, run, jump, pull themselves up, things of that nature. So your 5 to 10-year-olds should be getting some kind of physical activity every day. Excuse me. Growth. Growth during middle childhood slows considerably. Still, although day-by-day changes may not be obvious, they add up to a startling difference between 6-year-olds, who are still small children, and 11-year-olds, many of whom are now beginning to resemble adults. But they're not adults. School-age children grow about 1 to 3 inches each year and gain about 5 to 8 pounds or more, doubling their average body weight. Girls retain somewhat more fatty tissue than boys, a characteristic that will persist through adulthood. And of course, that's because of estrogen. Estrogen is the fat-building hormone. So we girls put on more weight, get curvy, and the boys develop, more testosterone so that they can be leaner, and then we start getting attracted to each other based on these differences. Of course, those figures are just averages. Individual children vary widely, so widely that a child of average height at about age 7, who did not grow at all for 2 years, would still be within the normal limits of height at age 9. And I remember we get met every year in the birthday. How much did you grow? African American boys and girls tend to grow faster than white children. By about age 6, African American girls have more muscle and bone mass than European American, white, or Mexican American, Hispanic girls, while the Hispanic girls have a higher percentage of body fat than white girls the same size. Although most children grow normally, some do not. One type of growth disorder arises from the body's failure to produce enough growth hormone, or sometimes any growth hormone at all. Administration of synthetic growth hormone in such cases can result in rapid growth in height, especially during the first 2 years. However, synthetic growth hormone also being used for children who are much shorter than other children their age, but whose bodies are producing normal quantities of the hormone. Its use for this purpose is highly controversial, and this is mostly during affluent parents who decide the kid's too short. Let's give them this to let them be taller, because it's not covered by insurance, and it's not cheap. So, I'm against that. Your child should be what your child is, The American Academy of Pediatrics Committee on Drugs and Committee on Bioethics And other medical experts recommend extreme caution in prescribing growth hormone, except as a replacement for an insufficiency of natural hormone. And any hormones you're injecting into your kid, unless they lack that, that is not good. That's messing them up. Like these people who are allowing their children to take hormones before they're fully grown, to change sexes. Your child is not a full-grown sexual adult. Until they are fully sexual developed, they don't know what they want to be. Because everyone goes through a stage where they have homosexual tendencies. They prefer one sex over the other. And that's just a fact of life. Now, I'm not saying they have homosexual sex. Good gosh, don't even go there with me. But if your child is not sexually mature, then you should not be tampering with their sex hormones at all. Now, once they get to be sexually mature and they want to do that, that's up to them. But no parent should be jumping in and altering their child's hormones in any way. I don't believe in that. It has physical ramifications, mental ramifications, and you shouldn't do it. And that's my opinion on that. So I'm going to leave you there today. And I hope that's helped you figure out maybe a little bit more of why you do what you do. Until next time.